Hey everybody, this is Aaron Cadell. I own a 2005 Volkswagen Beetle. I got in the car this morning and the windshield wipers didn't work, the headlights didn't come on, the fan blower motor didn't come on. So I tore the whole thing apart and I found nothing wrong with any of the relays, none of the fuses, nothing was wrong. What I did find was the ignition switch. When the ignition switch comes on, it turns on or activates a relay, and the ignition switch burned up. So that was kind of the big thing. The wheel taken off, the steering wheel taken off, and the odometer taken out. But when I got in here and pulled this off of the back side, so if you look here on the back there's the rear side of the ignition switch. Of course, there's the front side of the ignition switch. So when I pulled the connector off the back side of the ignition switch, if you look right in this area, all that's melted. I've already taken out the burned terminal. That terminal's right here. Here's the terminal. There it is. It's all burned up. You can see how that looks compared to the terminals. The other terminals, they all look nice and clean and together. The melted terminal is not so much. So I cut it out, and what I'm going to do is to solder in a new piece. So here's the back side of the ignition switch that I pulled off. I've already cleaned up the terminal. It's the one in the center there. Oh, I've cleaned it up a little bit. I'm going to solder a piece of wire on there, as opposed to these fail all the time, and fail because that connection gets loose and then it burns up. So I'm going to just solder a piece of wire on there and then put some heat shrink on it. Here's the finished product of the solder. All I did was solder a piece of wire directly onto that post. So one thing I did check, I opened up the back side, the plastic, the switch, and determined that it didn't do any damage to the switch itself. Had I opened it up and that was all melted, of course I wouldn't be soldering on a piece of wire as opposed to using a connector there. But I think this will resolve the problem of the loose connection and overheating. I've got the heat shrink over my soldered connection. So my next step is going to be I've already prepared that end there, and I'm going to go ahead and solder this end to the existing end, just like that. I'm just going to marry those two together, put a little heat shrink over that, and then start to reassemble it. Here's the finished product. I had to first clip this onto the switch, and then ran it through, and then made my solder connection, and then put some heat shrink over that. That should be ready to go. We're going to test it and see if it works. With the end on there, which I had to do because I soldered it all on. So I just I pulled all the way down and pulled the steering wheel all the way out. You know, the steering wheel goes in and out. And after I did that, it went in and I pushed it in place. Now what you need to do is there's that screw down at the bottom there, and then there's one more back in the back there. Once you get it all the way pressed in, you have to screw those screws in. So I'm about to do that. In there, I've got the set screws set. I plugged the battery back in, so let's see if it works. The fan should come on. I've got the fan running, so if I just go to auxiliary, and the fan is working. Amazing. Headlights seem to be working. So there we go. A little quick fix. But that, again, if the switch module is bad, this repair wouldn't fix it. But in this case, the switch module was still good. It had just melted the connector.